back 10 minutes before 8 o'clock. Ben Dor is my guest. We just need to hit the ground running. This time is going to go by quickly. Jan, I'm just going to start just reiterating some bullet points that you had provided to the show, and I'll ask you to comment on them if that's okay with you.
Great.
All right. Number one, you wrote that she's extorting local clerks with federal HAVA, which is Help America Vote Act, grant money. What's going on there?
Well, the electronic poll book is a Republican agenda item for what they claim is to expedite the lines in elections. But what it actually does is substitute an electronic list for what the law requires, which is a paper list of who voted. If we don't know who voted in an election, we have absolutely no election integrity. And that list is not only to be maintained in the polling place on a little netbook, but on a flash card, not even on the hard drive. Well, we all know how unstable flash memory is. So to substitute an electronic list for a legally required paper list is already bad news. Well, a lot of local clerks balked at this. They said, we don't trust that. It's not what the law says I'm supposed to be doing. And so to sweeten the deal, the Secretary of State said, well, if you'll go with this program, we'll give you laptops for your precincts. Well, that didn't do it. So now she's basically extorting local clerks, and this is actually in writing, Tony. If you don't go along with this program, she's not going to let you have any HAVA grant money, and this is not her money, this is the federal taxpayers' money, to maintain your tabulators. They need maintenance, just like your car needs maintenance. And so any local clerk that has to do maintenance is going to use their own budget and not have access fairly to this grant money, which is a terrible thing.
Is that illegal?
I think every aspect of this program is illegal. The electronic poll book is illegal, and it doesn't speed lines. The factor in the length of a line in an election is entirely based on how many places there are in the polling place for people to mark their ballot. The electronic poll book does not help at all.
Okay, again, we could spend the rest of our time on this alone, but I'm going to move on just for the sake of time, Ben Dor. The next point, and this one really got to me, refusing to comply with the Administrative Procedures Act, which requires the Secretary of State to promulgate rules by a public process, hearings, public comment, publishing comments, and the repeating invalid rules in training and accreditation materials. For example, the made-up 2006 ban on the use of poll watchers of video and cameras to document voting problems in polling places. This one got me, Jan.
Yep. We had a big push in 2006 called Video the Vote, for folks that might remember that. And it was a very successful national project where people went in with cameras to record all of the voter intimidation and problems. The night before the 2006 general election, we election administrators received a memo that cameras and video was suddenly banned, not only during the day, but after the polls closed, when the real stuff begins, when they started canvassing the vote. And this is the number one responsibility under MCL 168.31, where the first thing it says is that the Secretary of State shall promulgate rules pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act. And it sounds like a lot of inside baseball, I know, but this is really where democracy lives, because if you can just make stuff up in Lansing and promulgate it to 1,500 election administrators, you can corrupt every election. And what you're supposed to do is, if you have a rule you want to put in place, you tell people about it, you justify it under current statute, and then you hold hearings and you allow for public comment. And that has not happened since Richard Austin. And Ruth Johnson is going wild with disobeying this very serious law, which, by the way, other units of government in Michigan, the Department of Environmental Quality, they all faithfully follow it.
Well, what's good enough for everybody isn't good enough for Ruth Johnson. That's clearly the case, Jan BenDor. All right, we'll go on to number 3, insisting that the law that specifies the authority of election challengers is, quote unquote, obsolete when it has certainly not been repealed. Challengers have the right to see the votes counted and to record them on election night. Well, if that's not voter suppression, I don't know what is.
Exactly. And in fact, our organization was threatened with legal action if we had our challengers, which we have a program called MERA monitors, and our folks go in not to challenge any voters but to observe the procedures. For example, we find things like a stack of blank ballots sitting in the middle of the room, which is a real scary thing. Blank ballots are what you use to stuff ballot boxes with. So we thought, as part of our program of election transparency and verification, we would have our challengers, after the close of voting, asked to see the ballots and to count them right there. Do a hand count. That's the law says challengers can do that. And we were told by the Bureau of Elections that not only can we not do that, but they will take us to court if we try. And so not only are local clerks being threatened with lawsuits, but now citizens are being threatened with lawsuits if they try to exercise any of their rights.
Jan, why aren't we hearing more of? I mean, it's happening. This is stuff that's happening, Jan BenDor. This is not stuff that we're accusing them of. This is stuff that's actually happening. Why aren't we hearing a bigger uproar about this?
I think it's because most of the media, unlike yourself, are just not interested in elections. It's considered inside baseball. There's sort of a box within which we don't want to know what's happening. And finally, this year, with the uproar over the citizenship checkbox, we've finally gotten some media coverage of these concerns. But the right to vote is very much based on these procedures, and they may be boring, and they may be, not a lot of fun to learn about. But this is where it's at, and if we don't pay attention to these details, we're going to lose our democracy.
Jan, and unfortunately we're out of time. This, when we talk about Ruth Johnson, it reminds me of that scene in The Wizard of Oz where the wizard says, "Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain," as he's pushing all the buttons and blowing all the smoke.
That is exactly the image that we have been using to get people to look behind the curtain.
Well, it makes sense. Jan, we're going to definitely visit again. This is not our one and only visit, but we are out of time for today. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Tony.
I appreciate it. Again, she's an election official, folks. She knows what she's talking about. Again, it's the Michigan Election Reform Alliance.